So what is this and what is it used for? If you're clicking on this video, there's a good chance you don't know. Because, I mean, obviously you clicked on the video, or you did click on the video because you do know and you want to hear what I have to say about it. If you don't know, don't be ashamed. As a matter of fact, I'll take you through the evolution of how I learned what it was, just so you understand a little bit more. Because there is kind of a little bit of mystery surrounded with this device right here. So it all started off with the movie RoboCop, with a little bit of leftist propaganda with the assault cannon.
Cobra assault cannon, state of the art, bang bang. I like it!
After that movie, I'm still incredibly young, but I didn't know what they had, I just knew I wanted one. And one of the defining features, aside from it being a really large gun, is the device on the end of it. It kind of looked like an arrowhead. It was really cool looking. And then they had that fake scope on it, which I don't know what they had made that out of. But anyway, so it always kind of floated around in the back of my mind that regardless, I wanted my rifle to look as close to that as possible. So I want a magazine sticking out of it, and I want that arrowhead device on the front of it. So now let's fast forward to, okay, I'm 12 years old now. Well, actually it'd be like 11. I'm 11 years old now. My uncle decides he wants to buy me my first hunting rifle, which is pretty cool. So he takes me to the gun shop. The AWB has been in full swing for like a year now. So these devices do not exist anywhere, with one exception. The one I was seeing in the gun shops was the Browning break. I believe that's what they call this, the Browning break. And that made it infinitely more confusing because I'm a kid, you know, I'm like, I want the one with this on it, and they were trying to explain to me that, hey, you know, threaded barrels and stuff like that are for criminals. There's no reason for you to have one of those. These are only on particular rifles, and this is to increase accuracy. So I'm like, what? How would this device increase accuracy? Well, the reason Browning got away with this, from what I understand, this is not fact, but I'm telling you from what I understand, is this is a harmonic dampener. You can basically extend it out and adjust the harmonics of your barrel to make specific loads more accurate that just so happens to have porting on it. So that threw a whole line of confusion in it. Unfortunately, I didn't get a rifle. I winded up getting a PlayStation and a new shotgun, you know, a little bit later, because the rifles they were trying to show me, I don't know if maybe I didn't talk well or something to say that I was going to hunt deer, or maybe it was because of, you know, the common mentality in Wisconsin. Back then, if you wanted to hunt deer, you needed to have a rifle. It needed to be bolt action. It needed to be made out of wood. It needed to have a scope at least as long as my forearm or longer. And it needed to weigh like 20 pounds. So the firearms they were showing me were better suited for putting Lyndon B. Johnson into office than deer hunting. And I'm at the gun shop like trying out these rifles. I'm like, these things suck. None of them are suited well for me at all. The length of pull was way off. They didn't fit me right. Remember, I'm 11 years old, so I'm sitting in the gun shop with this big, massive rifle trying to hold it like this. In some ridiculous caliber. Like, the rifle was so long, I could have climbed up my 10-foot deer stand ladder and just reached over and grabbed the end of the barrel and picked up my rifle. I wouldn't have had to pull it up or anything. And the calibers they were trying to stick me in were like 270, 30-06. I can just imagine shooting it in the tree and the tree being like, poof. It was ridiculous. Those gun shop people were terrible. The suggestions they were giving me were terrible. None of them were suited well for me at all. So anyways, I forget about the rifle. I winded up getting another shotgun. My shotgun was my bread and butter anyway. And a break action shotgun was nice and short. It worked good for me. It was light enough. Because I tried the whole deer stand thing and it's not for me. I don't know how people can hunt like that. I was so wrapped in boredom like 15 minutes into it, I wanted to like claw out my eyes. I'm a person that likes to be on the ground. I like to take a more proactive approach to deer hunting. I like to kick the bush. Make something happen. gave up on rifles for quite a while. I just, like, I'd shoot some sometimes deer hunting, but they never really did it for me because, like I said, the mentality in Wisconsin is you had to have a scope, it needed to be made out of wood, it needed to be stupid heavy. I'm shooting at like 50 yards. I'm not trying to shoot the flea off their body, I'm trying to hit their vitals. When your whole scope is brown and you can just see like hair moving, and it's terrible setups. So anyways, obviously shotgun was the most effective tool for me, so that's what I stuck with forever. Eventually, I winded up buying an Armalite AR-10. Now before I had bought that rifle, I had learned that this was called a muzzle brake. And I go into the gun shop and I'm like, hey, I want that, because now the AWB is lifted, we can finally have muzzle devices, we can finally have magazines over 10 rounds, etc., etc. It basically puts AR-15s back on the market, because the ones that were on the market during the AWB were terrible. They couldn't have collapsible stocks or anything, so it basically had an M16 stock. It had a 10-round magazine. I can't remember how they got around the pistol grip thing. And then the barrel was just chopped off. There was no muzzle device. So as soon as these firearms started popping up with muzzle devices, and I always wanted an AR-15 anyway, I'm like, hey, can I have the one with the muzzle brake? Because of the poor gun shop owners, they'd be, hey Roy, he wants the rifle with the muzzle brake. I'd be like, go f*** yourself, and I'd leave. So I didn't buy one for a long time. Finally I went into a gun shop, and that guy was semi-nice. He winded up ripping me off in the end. But anyways, he was semi-nice, and he's like, you know, that's not actually a muzzle brake, that's called a flash suppressor. Which added a whole nother pile of confusion, because I had called a silencer, which it is called a silencer. That's the actual definition. That's what the person who created it calls it. They are called silencers. Well, I had called it a silencer once because I was inquiring about it. I'm like, well, hey, can I legally own a silencer or not? And, you know, same thing. Hey, Roy, he wants to buy a silencer. And then they grilled me, oh, that's called a suppressor. So then when that gun shop guy called it a suppressor, which is this, he's like, this is a flash suppressor. Well, you know, okay, where have I heard that noise? Flash, you know, a flash. Suppressor. So now I'm thinking it has something to do with a silencer. So that was just a whole nother line of confusion. Well, anyways, I wound up buying an Armalite AR-10A2 from him because he was actually, like, civil to me. He talked to me. I've always had money going into the gun shops. I just never liked the people behind the counter, so I never bought a firearm from him. This guy was pretty cool with me. He still ripped me off, like I said. Anyway, I get my Armalite AR-10A2 home. I shoot the thing, and I was not happy with it at all. An Armalite AR-10 is not a 223, it is a 308. The thing bucked like a rifle. Instead of, you know, being what I had imagined, like, boom, 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 it was like, boom, boom. It was heavy on recoil. They're a pretty light firearm. I'm pretty sure the Armalite AR-10A2 comes in around 7 pounds. I'll post it or whatever. And I'm a small guy at that time. I'm only like 125, 130 pounds. Not suited for recoil at all. So anyway, like I had said, he had ripped me off on the rifle. The finish started falling off of the rifle, and then there was something wrong with the trigger. You would pull the trigger, and it would fire, and then every once in a great while, when you let go of the trigger, it would fire. Now, I bought this rifle under the impression, and the guy said it was new. It even says on the receipt, new. Come to find out, the rifle was used. It was actually, the warranty card was sent in 5 years ago, so Armalite couldn't do anything about the finish, but they fixed the trigger. And then I started grilling him. I'm like, dude, your ad says fast, accurate fire. How is that fast? That rifle's got way too much recoil, and they're like, well, we can take off the flash suppressor and put on a muzzle brake. I'm like, whoa, like mind blow, like what are you talking about? I know it's got a device on the end of the barrel. First off, I didn't even know it could come off, which that's pretty cool, it can come off. And then I started going, so like, can I put a silencer on that? And like, that's why I'm always kind of like, if I ever have a chance I will buy another Armalite AR-10A2. They ended up going tactical on all their rifles, and I don't like any of their configurations, but if they ever bring the Armalite AR-10A2 back, I'm definitely going to buy one, because I like the customer service that company had offered me. They did the repairs for free, and then they had sold me a muzzle brake. I put it on there, night and day difference. Now I can start shooting fast and accurate. Before, it was just shooting accurate with a bruise on my shoulder, and it just was not cool. After I put on a muzzle brake, it drastically reduced the recoil. So, okay, like, I get it. Muzzle brakes and flash suppressors are different. So, like, what are the differences? I started studying up on the topic. I wound up getting this book. It was for long-range shooting. I forget who wrote it. I tried finding the book so I could reference the information on it. They even had dimensions of how the perfect muzzle brake should be. It's supposed to be 60% larger than the bore for the first hole. I believe that's correct. I couldn't find the information to reference. Then it goes 30% and then 20%. Anything above and beyond that, you're just adding weight. I mean, this one, it still works because they're all like 60% larger than the bore, so you're still going to get the same effect. But you're not going to get any more effect as if you have the reducing holes in there. So that's what this does. It reduces recoil. Now, everything in the gun world is a trade-off. That's why you don't see these devices on every single firearm. For example, this one, now I'm not a scientist, I don't have slow motion cameras, and I can't prove this. This reduces flash. Now, I know it reduces flash. It actually does a pretty good job at reducing flash. Here's it compared against some other flash suppressors. But what I'm saying I can't prove is how it's supposed to do it is it directs gases and makes a shockwave. Puts it over the, alright, so your bullet exits, you have a bunch of hot gases, the fresh oxygen hits it, ignites into a ball of flame. That makes it so it's like trying to light a lighter inside of wind. It makes the ball of fire hard to ignite. So it makes your fireball smaller, and that's ideal for the military because, you know, if you're shooting at an enemy combatant and you don't have this and he sees a big flash, well, it's pretty obvious where he is. It's probably where that giant fireball just came from. So that's why you typically don't see muzzle brakes on military rifles. Another big trade-off of the muzzle brake is it changes how the sound is. For example, I don't have one without any device, but this one you're going to get most of the sound forward. Some of it's going to go up. With a muzzle brake, you'll still get some sound that goes forward, but a lot of it goes side to side. It's not too bad if you're actually shooting the rifle. Yes, you will notice a difference. Your rifle is going to be louder. But let's say you're moving in a squad or something, or you're deer hunting with someone else, that sound is blasting them right in the face. It's incredibly loud. And without a device on there, or the flash hider, it doesn't really matter because your sound is going towards what you're shooting at. So it's probably not going to care about the sound, it's going to be more concerned about the bullet wound inside of it. Where a muzzle brake, it's pushing the sound at stuff you're not shooting at. So that's a big unintentional consequence. Now you typically don't see muzzle brakes on sniper rifles because this is also pushing a lot of gas to the side. So let's say you're laying on dirt or leaves or something like that. You take a long range shot at a target, you're going to get a bunch of that dirt and stuff to kick up. It's going to highlight your position. Without a muzzle device on it, you might still get something forward, but say you were to lay down a mat or something like that, the gas going forward will dissipate by the time it gets off of the mat, so then you're not going to get a big dust ball around your position. Now, how this reduces recoil, so you touch off your cartridge. The bullet starts moving forward. Now, a lot of people think you're getting recoil right away from that, from the expansion of the gases, but they're being neutralized by the bullet moving forward. As your bullet travels down, yeah, there's gases pushing back on the casing, but then the casing's pushing back on the barrel, but you got the bullet moving forward on the barrel, so it neutralizes that out. Once the bullet leaves the barrel, then yes, you will get some recoil back from that. Now, your second recoil is where a lot of it comes from. So your bullet exits out of the muzzle. You get a whole bunch of hot expanding gases coming out, like a rocket ship. So if they're pushing straight out, you get thrust back on your rifle. What this is doing is redirecting those gases, so not all of them are pushing straight back. You siphon off some of the gases and then they push against each other, so they're neutralizing themselves out. Now, like on the 50, they actually change it with that arrowhead design. So not only are you making the gases fight against each other, you're also putting forward thrust on the muzzle brake, pulling the rifle forward a little bit. A muzzle brake can reduce a lot of recoil. If I remember correctly, on the 50, it reduces about 60% of the felt recoil. And that's what separates the muzzle brake from the flash suppressor. Say, for example, I were to weld a washer on the end of this, just slightly larger than the bullet. It would be able to wipe some of the gases away from the bullet, but then you would get a downward force. Right now, there's no... Yeah, some gases will go out, but look at the size of that hole. Very little downward force is going to be applied by this. There will be some, but not very much. Now, like I said, if you were to weld a washer on the end of this, just slightly larger than the bullet, then you're going to siphon a lot more of those gases, you're going to get a lot more downward force. And that's the basic difference. You have to decide what you're going to use your rifle for to decide if a muzzle device is even right for you, and if a muzzle device is right for you, which one do you want to pick? Are your targets going to be shooting back at you? That's where a flash suppressor would really come in, or not running any device at all if you're shooting in daylight, unlike a sniper rifle. Now, let's say you're running competition or something. Then you could put a muzzle brake on here and try to siphon off some of that recoil. Acquire your targets quicker. If you're shooting a really hard caliber, like .308 or bigger, a muzzle brake might not be a bad idea to take away some of that felt recoil. Plus, then you'll have a faster follow-up shot because your barrel won't rise as much. Your rifle won't come back as much. You'll be more closer to your original shooting position so you can take a follow-up shot. If you're hunting, not a good idea to run a muzzle brake. Especially if you're hunting with more than one person, because silencers are for criminals and assassins. They're kind of hard to get. You can still hunt with them in Wisconsin, but you have to go through the tax stamp process and all that. So basically, most of your hunters are just going to be running without any device at all and without ear protection. You don't want to wear ear protection when you're hunting because you want to be able to hear when deer are walking. Or if, like, let's say you see something, if for whatever reason there's a house in the distance but there's woods covering it and you don't know the house is there, but you're with somebody that does know the house is there, and you're going to sweep on a deer and he's like, hey, don't shoot that way, there's a house there, you're not going to hear him say that if you have ear protection on. That's why silencers are so awesome, and we need to make them easier to own because they're hearing and life-saving devices. But if you were to run a muzzle brake in that same situation and you touch off a round, you're going to suffer hearing damage. And hearing damage is accumulative. I can't pronounce the word right. But anyways, the more louder stuff you hear, your hearing adjusts to it and you hear less. Now, it's really bad for your partner shooting next to you because if you have a muzzle brake, all that noise is thrown right at his head. You'll feel a pressure wave if you're running a muzzle brake. It'll feel like somebody's taking an envelope with a single sheet of paper in it and slapping you in the face, depending on how hard of a caliber you're shooting. So those are all things you need to be considered when selecting a muzzle device, if you're going to run a muzzle device, and if you should run a muzzle device. If you'd like to check out any of my other videos, click on the links up here. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave in the comments below if you run a muzzle device and what type of application you use it for.
I'd buy that for $1.